So, welcome to Prison Professors. A lot of the people who watch our program are inside of jails and prisons, and they're really looking forward to getting into that next step toward home confinement. And so we're so fortunate to be able to talk to my friend Danny, who has gone through a journey in the criminal justice system, including time in federal prison. But today, as you can see, he is not in a federal prison. He is home. Welcome, Danny. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Michael.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, you've been a part of our community for several years, but now you are home, and I'd really like you to tell our audience just a little bit about yourself, about how much time you served in federal prison, and what types of challenges you faced in getting out of prison and onto home confinement.
Okay, so just to kind of summarize everything, about, let's see, in 2017, the FBI showed up at my door and indicted me for selling marijuana. I was trafficking marijuana out of state. I'm from California, state where it's legal, but I was trafficking it to a state where it was illegal, Georgia, in fact. I was arrested, and I was not arrested initially. I was given a target letter, and that was when I contacted you, Michael, and that was when we first met. And shortly thereafter, I was arrested and put into a Georgia jail cell where I spent about a year in jail in Georgia. Eventually, I was able to get bond for a short period of time until sentencing. During that time, you and I worked together to prepare for sentencing the best we could. I used a lot of your methods and recommendations on trying to get the lowest sentence possible. That included community service, education, maintaining employment, character letters. There was a plethora of things that we did to try to mitigate the sentence. In the end, the judge was very strict against marijuana. He even made a comment that he thought it was the same as heroin, and sentenced me to 96 months in federal prison. I self-surrendered to Lompoc Low Security Facility. Even though that I had camp points, for some reason, I never made it to camp. There's something going on inside the system whereby they don't seem to always follow the policies. The custody classification points I had should have sent me to a camp, but I didn't go to a camp, and I was never really given a reason why. I spent 3 years in Lompoc Low Security Federal Prison, and I have just been recently released on home confinement. I was actually really lucky in that aspect. Real quick, while I was in prison, there was a lot that I accomplished that reduced my sentence. I completed the Tdep program that removed 12 months from my sentence. While inside, I programmed the entire time. I took every program I could. I completed over 50 programs. A lot of people didn't understand why I was taking all these programs, but I had to move forward in the hopes that eventually the First Step Act would kick in. And it did right at the tail end of my sentence. That gave me another 12-month reduction. So altogether, I was able to get 14 months of good time, 12 months of RDAP, 12 months of First Step Act, and the remainder on home confinement, where I serve now.
Could you tell us about that challenge you faced and when you started getting ready for home confinement? How did you interact with the staff members at the federal prison where you were serving your time?
So one thing I could tell you, Michael, was that the case managers were not very receptive to the efforts I was putting in. I was seeing people that would catch disciplinary infraction shots, and they would get 12 months halfway house, and then the next guy that's programming would get 4 months. There seemed to be no rhyme or reason to how they did it. There's supposed to be a 5-factor criteria that they follow. They don't do that. From my experience, they don't do that. They grant whoever they want whatever amount of time that they want. I was only granted the minimum. My case manager put me in for the minimum amount of halfway house, which was really disheartening after all my efforts between the programming, the college degree I earned, remaining disciplinary free for the entire sentence, and then I'd see other guys get 12 months. So it was very frustrating that I got the minimum. Fortunately, even though he attempted to grant me the very minimum possible, the first step kicked in, and he no longer was able to give me the minimum because I got so much time off. I didn't have enough time left to get 12 months halfway house, so I was only granted 4 months home confinement. So the challenge that I faced in federal prison was that it seemed like no matter how hard I worked, that there was no reward for it. In regards to getting more halfway house or getting RRC placement. Now, where I did benefit is that the area that I live in California, in the Sacramento area, is they don't have a halfway house, as you're aware, Michael, in Sacramento. The closest one is San Francisco and Oakland and Fresno. Now, there's a new program in Sacramento, which I'm currently in, which is it's called the DRC. It's the Day Reporting Center. So what it is it's home confinement. But this center was created by the BOP. It's very unique. It's the only one in the BOP where it's a day reporting center. So it appears like a halfway house. You go in and you report each day, or you call each day, and they do home confinement with ankle bracelets, and so it's unique in the aspect that it's like a halfway house, but nobody lives there. So it's created for people that have places to go, and it's unique to the Sacramento area, and it really should be the future of what the BOP does, because it appears to be a much more cost-effective way. Sorry, Michael, I'm trying to turn off this messages. A much more cost-effective way to help inmates re-enter into the community.
So what do you have the policy statement on that day reporting center?
The policy statement? I don't believe there is a policy statement. I think it was simply my case manager put me in for Sacramento. When they put you in for halfway house, it goes to a residential reentry management center for that region. So they put, I don't think the case manager made the decision. This was done by the RRM, which is the residential reentry management. So they sent me out for halfway house, probably put me in for San Francisco. The RRM said, wait a minute, this guy's a perfect candidate for the new DRC program in Sacramento. One, he lives in Sacramento. Two, he has housing, which we've already verified. And so they assigned me to this program rather than sending me to Oakland or San Francisco, which really wouldn't make any sense. You know, if I live in Sacramento, why would I travel 2 hours to a halfway house in the Bay Area where you're going to have to get employment, and then as soon as you're done with your period there, you're going to go back to Sacramento where you live? It wouldn't make any sense, and have to quit your job. So I think it makes perfect sense to have this program. They can place a lot more inmates because it's much more cost effective, saves taxpayers dollars, and it's a better program, and I think it leaves more bed space for the people that actually need it.
When you were talking about how difficult it was for you to get home benefit for the work that you've done and to advocate for yourself while you were in prison, there are changes that are happening in the Bureau of Prisons, but one of the things that I experienced is those changes take years before the Bureau of Prisons implements them.
Yes.
Yesterday, I published an article on this new rule that the Attorney General is giving to the director to send people to community centers much earlier in their sentence, give them the opportunity. And you would have certainly been a great candidate for that had you had the ability to advocate in such a way that persuaded them. It's unfortunate that you had a case manager that didn't recognize your work toward preparing for release. And that's kind of one of the purposes of this program, is to help people figure out, what can I do given the changes with the First Step Act and other areas to advocate for myself so that I can get home sooner. But I think where you could provide a lot of value today is telling us about what goes on at that day reporting center.
So I've been in the program for about a month, and the first day I got there, I was released from federal prison. I was given 6 hours to get from Lompoc to the day reporting center in Sacramento. I made it with about 10 minutes left. It was a tight window, and I remember your experience. You told me it was a tight window as well when you were released. So yeah, they don't give you much leeway. I was released about an hour late, and it made it tight. But I arrived there, received an ankle bracelet, and I was told that I would have to come back in the next day, the next morning. The
Well,
next morning,
go a little slower. So
okay.
you got there and you said you received an ankle bracelet. They didn't just put it on you. I'm sure they asked you questions. And tell us about getting there.
Okay, so my wife picked me up from the prison. I was released at 9 in the morning. I drove there with her. And when I arrived, I met with a case manager, or it was actually not a case manager. It was simply an administrative person that works in the DRC. The DRC looks like a small office complex. It's in a small office complex, and it's a small office building. I went in the door. A gentleman came out. I introduced myself. They were waiting for me. They had me take a drug test and a breathalyzer. Then I received my ankle bracelet, and I was told that the next day I would be coming in for an interview.
How long was that? How long was that entire process from the time that you stepped in the door until the time they passed you an ankle bracelet?
I think it was about an hour and a half. I filled out some documents. My wife waited outside. I filled out some forms. It was like general intake information. They gave me a quick breakdown of what the program was like, and then informed me that I would need to come back the next day to further interview and further prepare for the program. Also, one thing I'd like to mention, Michael, was they're very the BOP is very secretive about their RRC placements, in the sense that when I was granted RRC, I was the first one in my prison that I know of that was sent to this program. Everyone else was, even from Sacramento, was going to San Francisco and Oakland halfway houses. So I asked, the case manager, hey, what is this place? I've never heard of this halfway house I'm going to. And they wouldn't give me much information. I had my wife call. They wouldn't give it much information. So I didn't 100% know if I was going to home confinement or a halfway house, because no one would answer the question.
Well, that's very helpful, and we'll try and shed more light on it. I'm certain that there's a policy driving it, even if it is the program statement that governs how the business got the contract with the Bureau of Prisons. But I'm quite certain that with some research on the BOP's website, we can find the contract and we can get some information that will help people understand what the experience is like. But your firsthand experience is really helpful. So you said you got there, you filled out some paperwork, and within 90 minutes you had your ankle bracelet and you were sent on your way. Did they give you any parameters of what you could or couldn't do when you left there?
Yeah, and one more thing, like I wasn't 100% positive I was just getting an ankle bracelet, so I had to have my wife pack bags. I didn't know if they were going to hold me. I didn't know what to expect, so that made the experience a little more difficult. But yeah, the parameters were that I was to remain at home. I was not to drink alcohol or use drugs, and that I had to have a landline phone set up. Even though the ankle monitor is not connected to the landline phone, they want you to have a landline phone. If they call, that I'm to answer, and that I'm not to leave the house. Those were the general perimeters of my home confinement, and that I was to come back the next day for a full interview with my case manager, a one-on-one.
So you never had to let them know whether you had employment or a pathway to go to school or anything along those lines. It was just report, get your ankle bracelet, go home, and we'll figure it out tomorrow.
Correct. Yeah, they did not require me to have employment set up yet or school. And they had already, I should mention too, about 3 weeks before I received my notification of the halfway house placement, or the RRC placement, a gentleman did contact my wife and come inspect my house, just to go backwards. So that happened before I received my date.
And so tell us about the first appointment the following day with the administrator at that day reporting center.
So I met with my case manager. We conducted, he had me conduct a few kind of tests, I guess you could say, psychological tests, kind of screening information about myself, about my drug history, about my crimes, my substance abuse history, what my plans were. It was just it was about a 2-hour meeting where we just talked about everything. He explained the entire program. He gave me an outline of what my schedule would look like. It's required that I meet with him once a week. It's required until you have employment that you attend employment workshops for a couple hours a week. There's also a couple other meetings, which I've only been to one yet, that are like group settings, where there's other people on home confinement. We all go and have a group. I've only had one since it's supposed to be weekly, but for some reason I've only had one since I've been released. And then in addition to that, Michael, I have RDAP aftercare responsibilities, which I believe is called Tdot. So in addition to my responsibilities to the DRC, I also have to conduct once a week a one-on-one meeting with a RDAP specialist, as well as a 1.5-hour group meeting with an RDAP group.
So you reported the day reporting center the first time how long ago?
Month ago.
And so that means that for 4 weeks you've been going there. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And how many hours a week does it take you to meet your obligations at the day reporting center?
So my travel time is about 45 minutes, but excluding my travel time, I have about, if it depends if you have employment or don't. Since I did not have employment yet, my current responsibilities to the DRC would be roughly 6 hours spread out throughout the week to be at the day reporting center, and 3 hours of RDAP responsibility. So about 9 hours a week.
So let's go a little slower on that, because it's you can't really discount the 45 minutes each way, because that's real time here on the road, right? So it's almost 2 hours of travel time, right? Hour and a half of travel time. And then when you go, how long are you there?
Yeah, so usually it's about an hour. Each program is an hour. Some of them are bundled together. For instance, on a Wednesday, I may have to go at 12 to 1:30 for one group, and then from 1:30 to 3 for an employment group, where they teach you strategies on finding employment. So there are some hoops to jump through, but coming out of federal prison and coming through the RDAP program, where I was the head senior guide of the program, I became used to these responsibilities. And it's not too difficult for me to put up with some of the things, the hoops you have to jump through. And also that's in addition to the occasional, hey, we want you to come in right now unexpectedly to test. They have you come in unexpectedly to drug test. And in fact, yesterday morning at 6 a.m., I got a call that they were out front of my house, and they breathalyzed me at 6 in the morning on a Sunday morning. So there's just unexpected things that come along with it as well.
Do they provide you any resources? I mean, gas is now like $7 a gallon down here in Laguna Niguel. I don't know what it is up in that area, but I got to imagine it's still north of $6 a gallon. Do they provide resources for fuel?
No, they don't. I believe that's one of your responsibilities. They expect you to be able to handle your housing, your cell phone, and your transportation. When they say jump, you better go. And I think that's part of the home confinement reward process, is that you need to be able to handle those things.
What if you did have a job? How would that work?
Well, I did just get a job. I'm a commercial driver, Michael. I got my CDL while I was on pretrial, so I just got a job at Cisco Systems. So what the rule is, pretty. Let's see. It was because he had just called me Friday. I got my job Friday, and he said, "Well, it's good you got a job, because had you not, we have a rule here that if you don't have employment within, I believe it's 20 or 30 days. I can't remember which one. It's either 20 or 30 days." That you must go to the DRC every day and sit there in the employment lab they have set up, which is basically a room full of computers and resources. You have to sit there 8 hours a day until you find employment. You cannot be home. So I'm very glad I was able to get that job. Also, programming counts as school too. So if you're enrolled in college, then or you're a full-time GED program, that would also qualify as programming, whereby you would not have to sit at the DRC looking for employment for 8 hours a day.
But they didn't tell you that the day you got there. They just luckily said, "Oh yeah, you got it," and so it's fine. But they never warned you in advance or gave you some guidance. Hey, if you don't find a job within 4 weeks, you're gonna have to come in here and sit for 8 hours.
Not the first day. I believe I received that information through the first employment group, which was about 3 weeks after I had arrived there.
Can you tell us about the experience of getting the first job? You said you're at Cisco System. Is that the computer company or the food company?
The food company.
So you're driving the food. Tell us about the whole interview process and how you got the job.
Well, I filled out several applications on Indeed. A lot of the employers that I was seeking employment with, I would get to a phone interview process, or nowadays it seemed like a lot of employers are just texting questions, and things were going well. It's there's a big need for commercial drivers right now, so I didn't feel that I would have a very difficult time finding employment. But for instance, one employer, I thought I had a job, and he said, "Oh, we need you. You have a clean driving record." I said, "Yes," and this was all by text message. And he said, "Hey, it's $28 an hour. When can you start? Hey, by the way, do you have any felonies?" I said, "Yes, I had a felony for marijuana." "How long ago?" And I said, 5 years ago. And right after that, he just said, "Okay, thanks," and no longer would offer me the position. He just stopped responding. He ghosted me. So I dealt with some challenges like that. I was actually surprised. Because it seems that it's a very common industry for ex-felons to get into, is the trucking industry. It's a decent paying career, and it's not too difficult to obtain. But I did meet some obstacles. So with Cisco, I received an interview. Let me back up a little bit too. I was attending several job fairs as well, which my case manager was approving, whereby I can go to different job fairs and seek different employers. A lot of the times they weren't good fits, but I was staying diligent in my search for employment. So with Cisco, I received the interview. I submitted the application. They said they had walk-in interviews on a Friday. So I went in last Friday, and the first interview, I explained about halfway through the interview. I just said, "Hey, let me just explain this to you right now. Let me drop this bomb on you and get it out the way before we go any further, because it seems like we're doing good with this interview, and I don't want to waste your time." I said, "I just got out of federal prison for selling marijuana. I have some responsibilities to a day reporting center, and I can't leave the Eastern District of California, which goes from about Reno, or the Tahoe border of California and Nevada, and down to Bakersfield, and I can't go past Vallejo." And I said, I don't know if that would work for this job." And the gentleman at Cisco was very nice. His name was Lance, and he understood that he wasn't concerned with my past, but really on where I'm going forward. He really liked me. So he said he thinks they could work around it. He asked how long I'm on the DRC program. I told him about 90 more days. He said, "I think I could work around that." He said, "We're going to give you another interview." I went into another interview room. This gentleman was the second interviewee or interviewer, and I told him the same situation, and he was very casual about it. He said he had a felony in the past, and it wasn't that big deal to him. And then they had me go drive a truck, and I was able to drive the truck without crashing it into a wall, which was difficult because I haven't drove a big rig in several years. And so I got the job offer. They said it's just up to HR if they'll clear the felony, and I should be taking a drug test tomorrow and starting. It's a good job. It's a union, $30 an hour, so it's going to keep me busy for a while here.
I think there's some takeaways there for people who are watching this program inside of a jail or a prison. That is that you can expect to face some obstacles, but you can also see examples of people who've overcome them. And we could even hear that the second interviewer, which I presume is some kind of managerial role, he also had a felony. So even though you have a felony, it doesn't mean you can't move up within a company, as that fella did, and as I'm sure Danny will do. Danny, how will your job interfere with your responsibilities at the day reporting center? I mean, if you're working and you've got a work schedule and they're calling you, come in right away, how will that play out on a job? And how will this responsibility of taking what really amounts to be 2 to 3 hours out of your day, an hour to get there, hour to get back, and an hour there, that's 3 hours when you're already working a full-time job. How are they going to respond to that?
So they're actually very helpful when it comes to that. They do want you to get employment, and it's actually I hear that a lot of the other halfway houses are more difficult, but this DRC, the people are very friendly and they're very helpful. They want you to work. So they're actually willing to reschedule your one-on-one meetings with them to the evenings if you work in the days, or to the days if you work in the evenings. So they're willing to reschedule. My RDAP one-on-one is also willing to reschedule around my schedule. The only one I cannot change is the RDAP group, which is from 5:30 to 7 on Wednesdays. But I did inform the employer of that responsibility, and he said that should be no problem, that he'll make sure I'm off by 5:30 on Wednesdays.
So 5:30 to 7, how long will that Tdep program last?
The duration of my home confinement, which is 4 months.
And then you're done with RDAP? That's behind you?
I'm done with everything.
You're done with the Bureau of Prisons?
Yes. And I begin my,
supervised release.
Supervised release, yeah.
So tell us about what goes on in the Tdep meeting.
So the one-on-one Tdot meeting is the one-on-one meeting is really, it's really just, we conversate about life. And the gentleman that I have the meeting with, he's an old retired probation officer. He's extremely helpful, really great guy. His name is Bill. He sends me all kinds of links to job opportunities. He even sent me some links to help me find my son a job. So we just kind of talk. He just sees how I'm doing throughout the week, how my interactions are going with my family and the community, and positive peers, negative peers, job hunt, just general life questions. And he just makes sure I'm on a good path. The group is the 5:30 to 7:30 on Wednesday. So the group is basically a live, online video with several people. I think there's probably 10 or 15 people in that group from different areas in the Eastern District of California. And we're given workbooks to work out of. I haven't received mine yet. She said it's in the mail. But generally speaking, we'll go through a workbook and then we'll discuss the book in the group.
You said it's on, so it's over like a Google Meet, like what we're doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing.
And what are you hearing about the 15 other people that are in the program? How's their experience been on home confinement and Tdep?
You hear a lot of bickering. A lot of people are complaining about the hoops that they have to jump through. And for some people, the challenges is greater than for me. I have reliable transportation. I have a license. I have support through my family. A lot of people don't have that. So I could understand their grievances, as well as some of them live further away. I think one of the guys lives in Chico, and he has to drive, 2 or 3 hours to the DRC. And when they tell you at the spur of the moment, hey, you need to come in right now, you have to go.
But not if you have employment, right?
Yeah. I mean, if it's your day to test, to random drug test, yeah, you have to get up and go.
But what if your employer scheduled you for work that day?
They would probably make you come afterwards or before. But they're going to want you to come in that day.
Wow. So it's a lot to learn about supervised release also after you finish with the Bureau of Prisons. But I think that you can expect to see supervised release to be a lot more accommodating when you transition out of the Bureau of Prisons and into that supervised release meeting. Tomorrow, I told you I've got an interview meeting with the former head of reentry for the Bureau of Prisons. So he was in charge of the entire nation. Do you have any questions that I might ask him that might be of interest to you, or you think of interest to other people, so I can make sure I'm getting the best information possible?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem that I saw from the inside was that you weren't able to request home confinement. It seemed that the case manager just assigns you to a halfway house, and it may suit you better to go to home confinement. So I think there should be some criteria implemented whereby inmates who need housing should be sent to the halfway house, and inmates who have stable housing should have the opportunity to skip the halfway house, save taxpayer dollars, be more efficient in their reentry to the community, and be able to go home with their families.
So they explained to you, I'm sure, the law on the Second Chance Act of how much time was available on halfway house or residential reentry centers?
I believe it's currently 12 months.
So the Second Chance Act does provide for a maximum of 12 months, but only the last 6 months, maximum of 6 months on home confinement. So, or 10%. So somebody who has a 3-year sentence, that person can only get a maximum of 3.5 months on home confinement. You can still go to the reentry center. That's under the Second Chance Act. But under the First Step Act, the director has more discretion, particularly during the people who qualify under CARES Act. Why is it that you didn't get released under the CARES Act?
I did apply. I received a generic response, like most others that were denied. It could be something as simple as, we've reviewed your information and decided you're not a good candidate. They don't really give reasons. And then it makes it difficult to appeal through the administrative remedy processes, those decisions. Very vague answers. I wish I would have saved. I just actually shredded a bunch of that stuff. But
why do you think it's difficult to proceed through administrative remedy when you get those vague answers?
Because it's really up to the BOP's the way it's written. It's up to the BOP's discretion. There's no policy in place whereby if this inmate puts in this work, does this program, does this, he will be granted it. It's all up to their discretion, and often that discretion doesn't help the inmate.
So you found a lot of resistance from case managers in the Bureau of Prisons, even though they could have let you come home on the CARES Act. They resisted your efforts. Yeah, they had put out a general guideline of criterion of, if they fit this criteria, they should be considered for home confinement. I met all those criterias. I believe it was, no disciplinary infractions over a certain period of time. It was a nonviolent drug offenders with no violence, no sex offenses. I met that. Amount of time served, I met that. I remember there was a list, and I met them all, but they still didn't grant it to me. And that's what I mean by the discretion. So let me see if I can share my screen with you on something, and I don't know if I can. It's going to take a little bit of technological maneuvering, but I'm going to try it. Let's just see here.
Yeah, so it was the Bill Barr memo. He set out, and I met all those, like a lot of my other fellow inmates, but we were not granted home confinement, even though, and then the people that were granted home confinement often did not meet the criteria. It seemed like there was no.
But you did not pursue it through administrative remedy. You didn't take it to a BP 9, 10, 11. Is that right?
Yeah, I went all the way up.
You did, or you did not?
I did.
And then you did not file in court after that?
No. Let's see here. For the CARES Act, yeah, I did file in court. I filed for a 2241 in the Central District of California, and I filed pro se.
Why didn't you go? I thought you said your sentencing judge was in Georgia.
He was, but for the circumstances, there was also the COVID outbreak at Lompoc, the ACLU lawsuit. Deliberate indifference was ruled by a judge. So under the circumstance that the conditions were not safe of my, I guess, habeas corpus. Mm-hmm. So we filed in the Central District of Los Angeles. They punted it to Georgia, and then the Georgia judge rejected it. So
you lost every step.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. There are so many. There's such a need for self-advocacy, but also helping the administrators understand how they're really depriving people of justice. I mean, you were at risk, and you did get COVID in there, didn't you?
Twice. Yeah.
Were you vaccinated?
The first time they didn't have the vaccines yet. The second time, yes, I was vaccinated.
Well, what are your goals and your expectations now that you're home?
Well, right now I just got employment, so I got to put some food on the table. That's the first things first. My goals are to start a trucking company, and I'd like to start a trucking school. I'd really like to find federal programming whereby I can start a school where the federal government will help pay for people coming out of prison to get their commercial licenses. There's a shortage in commercial drivers.
Did you say you want to found the school? You want to start a school?
Yeah, I want to start a school, but I want to find funding through the federal government whereby they pay for these inmates who come out of prison and are at halfway houses. They can come to the school and get their CDL while they're in the halfway house so that they can have a career. I think a lot of the people that go back to prison go back to selling drugs because they can't financially support themselves. They get low-paying jobs and they turn back to crime to find ways to make ends meet. But by creating careers for these people in commercial as commercial drivers, there's high-paying careers. I think that'll prevent a lot of people from going back to prison if they can afford to take care of their families.
Have you written a business plan for that ambition?
Yes, I have. I wrote a business plan for it, but I have not done the research yet to find the federal funding.
How much money do you think you need?
Well, it's not about the startup. It's not the federal funding. It's not the startup. It's about getting vouchers for these inmates. So if someone comes out, the school can get paid, and the inmate can go to school. The ex-offender, let me say, can go to school for free and learn how to drive a truck and get commercially licensed. That's the key. Is that there's vouchers for these inmates to get back in the community and have a high-paying career.
But how much capital do you think it will take to start that school program?
I'd say roughly around $100,000.
And your anticipation is if you can process 20 people through your academy a month or something along those lines, the government will pay the tuition for those participants. Is that what I understand?
That is true, and that's the research I need to do. I haven't got to yet. So that's another one of my goals. Also, I'm very interested in flipping real estate, so that's something I'm going to partake in. And my education is important to me. So I'm dealing with Project Rebound. It's actually a organization that helps ex-offenders, returning citizens, get enrolled through the school process. As I mentioned, I got my associate's degree while I was in prison, so now I'm transferring those credits over to Sacramento State, and I'm in the process of enrolling there. I'd like to get my MBA. That's the ultimate goal.
Well, good for you, Danny. Congratulations on getting through a tough journey. I mean, it's got to be very difficult to be serving time for a marijuana offense when it's legal in most of the country or many states already. But you got through it with your dignity intact and with a great attitude. And now you're on to build the next phase of your life. And I'm really grateful to you for sharing your story. We pipe this program into people in jails and prisons across the country through the people that have access to digital platforms. And I think it's important for them to realize that even though it's difficult and there are challenges while they're in prison, there's going to be continuing challenges when they come home. But a guy like you gives people hope that they can overcome. Are there any last words that you might want to share with that audience?
No, I just like to say to those that's inside, don't waste your time watching television all day and playing poker. If you put your mind into education and into books, you can come out strong, prepared for release, have a good business plan in place, and hit the ground running. That's about it.
That's the message of Prison Professors, and we hope that you find value in listening to this story from Danny. And we wish you success as well. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on iTunes, we do hope that you will subscribe to the program. But one of the things that we're always striving to do is be the change that we want to see in the world. We wish that we could change the system, but that is going to require a lot of work, including not only from people on our team, but also people who are watching the program, because the more people that come out successfully, the more we can build a stronger message of showing why there's a need for prison reform. Thanks so much for being a part of Prison Professors.
Thank you, Michael.